Hello and welcome back to another episode of BPL Presents. I am librarian Jennifer, and today we are going to meet with a couple of Skagit County's best newspaper reporters from Skagit Publishing. This event is being recorded, so if you need to turn off your mic or off your video, please do so now. If you have not yet, we go. If you've not yet stopped by the library, starting December 1st, we will be doing a program called Give the Gift of Reading. So you can pick up a book for any child or teen in your life to give as a holiday gift. That is completely free, and you do not need a library card to participate. Just show up and ask for a book. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to hand it off to our two reporters and let them introduce themselves so that way you don't get confused. Go ahead, ladies.
Okay, so I guess I'm starting. My name is Kera Wanielista. I am the education reporter at the Skagit Valley Herald. So the Skagit Valley Herald, that means my job I cover the 7 public school districts from Anacortes to Concrete and everything in between. And I cover some other things at the paper too, because we're pretty small. So I cover cops, courts, crime, fire, and some military things as well. So that's what I do at the newspaper.
So my name is Briana Alzola Lindquist, and I am a reporter at the Anacortes American. So unlike here, I kind of cover just Anacortes, so I stay pretty local to my town, and I cover education also. So I cover the school district, but I also write about the arts community, about the Port of Anacortes, about the library and the museum, and about any other feature things that come up. And I brought a copy of paper.
Oh, that was smart. I should have done that.
And
Yeah.
I also am the primary person who does the layout. So I am the one who makes the paper look like this so that it can come out to houses. So like Kara said, we are pretty small. So we only have 3 reporters at our paper and 2 are part-time. So I cover a lot of different things that come up and take pictures and am out in the community a lot.
Yeah, I would say a lot of my job, in normal times, and when we get through this and go back to normal times, a lot of my job is spent out in the communities. And my favorite part of my job is getting to spend time in the classrooms and talking with students and really getting to kind of highlight the things that are going on in classrooms. I should also say that also because both of our papers are small, Brianna and I also take a lot of photos. Brianna takes more than I do, but we also do a lot of our own photos, which is fun when you're in the classroom because it's fun to take photos of kids.
One of my favorite things about taking pictures in a classroom versus other settings is oftentimes adults that you have to take pictures of are very hesitant around the camera and say, oh, no, like I don't want my picture taken. But kiddos are a little different and they are ready always to get their picture taken. And I love that. It makes my job so much easier.
It's really, I really like seeing how excited the kids are when they're in the classroom.
Well, especially because a lot of times we get to come in and talk about really cool programs or units that kids are doing. And so I love to hear about the different exciting ways that you're learning and just new ways to introduce things like that we never got to do when we were in school. So I feel like I get to learn when I go into the classroom, like about coding and other things like that, where I don't know what's happening, but the second grader who I'm talking to can teach me all about it.
So what Brianna and I are saying is that we also miss you guys.
Yeah, we do. I got to go take pictures on a first day of school, back to school, even though it's going to stop here in a few days. But it was really exciting to see everybody there and interacting with their principal and the superintendent. So I know they're going to miss you guys as much as you miss being in the classroom too.
Brianna, do you have a favorite story that kind of stands out to you?
Yeah, I was thinking about this this morning as I was getting ready to come here. And I got into this industry because I really like writing and I'm a little nosy, which is why I like to ask people questions. But my favorite type of story to write is feature stories. So I like to hear about people's lives and sort of what they've done with them. And I also really like on Valentine's Day, I get to do sort of couple stories. And so people who've been together a long time, I like love stories. I like to read about those. And my most favorite school story that I've done recently is I did a story on spelling bees, and I got to go to spelling bees at all the elementary schools in Anacortes and see everybody compete. And it was just so fun to talk to kids about how they're preparing for spelling bees. And I can't spell any of the words that they spelled. So.
No. I also got into journalism. Well, I decided when I was 16 that I wanted to be a journalist because I don't think I'm very good at math. I don't think I'm very good at science, but one thing that I think I've always felt that I am good at is writing. And when I was 16, my high school English teacher told me I should look at doing some sort of career that involved writing. And I said, what can I do where I can write and get paid to write? And that's how I got to journalism.
I spent a lot of time when I was younger kind of like on my own because my parents are divorced. So when I would go stay with one of my parents, then I didn't really have any friends there. So I made up towns in my backyard and reported on what went on there. And I had like a little newsletter about my fake town. So from a very early age, I was leaning towards journalism, and I changed my mind a couple of times, but I kept coming back to it. I
also had a newsletter when I was in high school. I would make my own little newsletter and go into Word at the time and just like put in the boxes and then type in the little boxes and then make another box and then leave a space so you could draw a picture.
As someone who does layout now, it's really funny, like thinking back to how I was trying to do things in like Microsoft Word or Paint. And use like the resources I had in construction paper and just cutting out the squares to make a newspaper. And it's interesting now that I do that for a living.
But man, I thought I was so cool.
I know, me too. I think we were pretty cool.
We were still pretty cool.
Still pretty cool.
Yeah. But one of the things that I really like about our job as well, and that kind of you were talking about, is that I don't think I have a favorite story that I've written lately. For me, I think it's like, or that I don't think I can say I have a favorite story. I have like whatever it is that I'm working on right now is my favorite story that I've ever worked on. So right now I'm working on a story about school resource officers and what school resource officers are doing now that there's no kids. Like, what are they doing when their job involves kids? I also did a really cool interview this week with a man who used to be the Secretary of Defense, the United States Secretary of Defense. So like the guy who like is in the room with the president and making decisions about our country and the future of our country and our armed forces. And I had an interview with him this week because he lives in Skagit County, and he was the nicest, most humblest man ever. And one of the things I really liked about that story, which you'll be able to read in a future edition of the Skagit Valley Herald, is the story is about how giving he and his wife are to this community and how they really care about this community. And so I really like finding the stories that show how good our community is, because our community is pretty great.
I totally agree with that. I think one of the best things about living in the Skagit Valley area is people tend to congregate here from all over the country and the world. I did a story once about a guy who in World War II was in a war-torn part of Europe, and he was totally cut off from resources, and they thought that they were gonna die, but then American soldiers, pilots came over and dropped food and saved their lives. And so he looked up and he saw a pilot leaning out of the plane dropping the food, and he was like chewing gum, and this guy thought he was like the coolest person he'd ever seen. So he was like, I want to become a pilot and move to the United States. And so now he's a pilot and he lives in Anacortes. And I just think that like this is such a great place because it's so beautiful and great here. Everyone is so nice that people just come here, and you get to meet so many people from all over the world.
Mm-hmm. And I think about like you talking about that, another story that I'm reminded of that I really loved was I interviewed a woman. She died a year or two ago. Her name was Noemi Bon, and she was
Yeah, I've talked to her too.
yeah, she was a Holocaust survivor. And one of the things that just stuck out to me the most about her is like when she was working in one of the work camps that they sent her to work, one of the jobs that she had, she was Hungarian. And so the job that they had was to build bombs that would be later dropped on the Allied forces. So on Americans, on British people, on the Allied forces. And because the people that were guarding them didn't speak Hungarian, they used a code to assemble the bombs wrong so that the bombs wouldn't explode. And like, what other job are you going to have where you get to talk to people like that?
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember too, like we are talking about sort of like really big stories or things but I feel like it's so fun to find like the stories in every person. Some people think that they're not interesting enough for the newspaper, but you can always like find something that's like interesting. And it's just like you want to write something that makes people say like, wow, I did not know that. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite things about this job is we were talking about the things that we cover, but like you really get like a sampling of so many different things. Like we write feature stories and stuff about cool projects in classrooms, but also about school budgets or hiring.
I love writing about school budgets.
Which, as someone who, you said like you went to this because you were not good at math, like it's interesting that we get into like you have an overview of finance, you have an overview of science, of environmental issues. Like you just get to sort of, that's my favorite thing about this job, I think, is I get to like take a part in so many different subjects. And this job definitely does not get boring because so much is going on. It changes every single day. And I love that.
Mm-hmm. One of the big changes that we've had recently, obviously, like everybody else, is that we're doing a lot of things via Zoom and a lot more things via phone. And for me, also, that's not ideal. And for our company prefers us to be out in the community and present and doing as much as we can face to face and interacting with our community. So like the rest of you, we've had to kind of navigate this new world in doing online things. And it's been interesting, but we're making it work. Covering elections has been interesting, doing it from home and Zoom and phone.
Like, it's usually such a big deal in one room. Everyone's like following different things and everyone's excited and eating pizza.
And you can just like, you can feel the energy in a newsroom on election night, and then you can hear all the as the results start coming in. And it was definitely much quieter this year. Yeah, definitely much quieter this year.
Well, I think that's something that sort of is true for all of the time, kind of like people who are doing at-home school right now. You know, you have the one time of day that you're talking to a bunch of people, but like I'm working remotely today and I work remotely most days of the week. I only go in a couple of days a week. And so just sort of that atmosphere is so different than it is when you're in a newsroom or in a classroom where things are happening and people are talking and you get that sort of energy to keep working. And like, so then at home, it's much quieter. It's easier to concentrate, but you're sort of missing that kind of like everyone working in that buzz of energy around you. So I just drink more coffee now.
So that was a big transition for me, is when we were in the office all the time, my desk is right next to the police scanner. And a lot of reporters, especially young reporters, will think that the scanner is loud and it's annoying and you don't want to listen to it. And I've learned over the 7 years that I've been at the Herald to either drown it out or pick up on the things that are supposed to be.
Those buzzwords that kind of pull you in.
Yeah, you hear the buzzwords. And when we first made the transition to home, I was like, no, I'm gonna miss my scanner. And now, like Brianna, I'm only going into the office a couple days a week, and I look at the scanner and I'm like, shh. And I just can't imagine.
Learn how to deal.
I have to relearn how to sit next to my scanner.
Yeah, this has been a weird year for me, like many people, because I cover almost all of the community events that happen in Anacortes. So I take pictures at all the summer festivals, and I do the calendars for all the holiday season. And so this year, that's how I sort of mark the passing of my year, because like this event is in the beginning of June, and then this event is in October, and then and so this year has been very strange because I have not been going to anything, much like everyone else. And so the passage of time has just been very odd.
And court, I haven't been to court since, since the beginning of March. So court and covering what happens in court is the newest part of my beat. And in a way, I feel like all the beats that we cover and beats are what we call the topics that we cover. And so you kind of get to be the expert of your topic because it is your beat. So I picture all of my beats like my children, and you can't pick a favorite. Although my favorite is education.
I was gonna say I have a favorite child.
You're not supposed to pick a favorite, but my favorite is education. But I was pretty reluctant to start the court beat just because there's a lot that happens in a short amount of time, and there's a lot of big words that if you have never been in that area before or in that world before that you don't understand. And I've learned to really embrace that beat because it's interesting, but also because I've kind of, you realize what an important part in our society the criminal justice system plays, and that a lot of people don't know a lot about the criminal justice system until you're thrown into it. And then all of a sudden you have to navigate what this all means and how it all works. And so I really have enjoyed trying to do that, the challenge of trying to kind of take everything that they're doing and they're so used to, and they throw out all these words and it's nothing to them, and like translate that into something that means something to people in our community. It's also the hardest part of my job, but it's a challenge that I've learned to embrace, I guess.
So that actually brings up something that I wanted to talk about. So we, to have this job, you have to have a college degree in journalism. So a lot of people in the community, think that they are also reporters, but it does take education. And I know our company will not hire anyone without a degree because you have to learn all the different rules, and you can't just publish, especially like in a topic, like a serious topic like criminal justice, or there's a tendency to try to rush. You have to check all your facts, you have to confirm everything before you publish it. And that's how you make sure that you're publishing something that's true and accurate. And so even if you're not the first person to post about it on Facebook, you have everything confirmed. And it's really important to our job and our newspapers that we keep that truth and accuracy high in our priority list, because that's how we know that people in the community can turn to us and know that we will have the true information. Because there's so many different sources where you can get things now that you need to have one that you can trust. And I feel like Skagit Publishing and the Skagit Valley Herald and the Anacortes American are definitely sources you can trust.
And so, building off of that, I was talking about how I have the police scanner next to my desk and how I've learned to listen to it. And one of our key rules is that if I hear it on the scanner, if it's something that you hear on the scanner, it's not like I hear it on the scanner and then I put it on the internet or I put it in the newspaper. If I hear it on the scanner, we have to have it confirmed. So if I hear something on the scanner, what I'll do is I'll pick up the phone and call the police chief or whoever is designated to talk to me from that department, because just because you hear it on the scanner doesn't mean it's true. The scanner is the cops talking to each other, trying to figure out what's going on and what they need to do. It's not necessarily a fact. So it does have a place in that, it's valuable in saying, hey, cops are out at such and such street, please avoid the area. But oftentimes what they're called out to is not what they end up actually responding to. So
because it's based on a very a small amount of information that they have to get more information, and then we get it from,
So anything that we put in the newspaper or online, we have talked to the people who know what it is. For example, Brianna and I both got a notice last night from one of the superintendents about how they're pulling back and sending kids back home. We wouldn't have run anything just on, Kera Wanielista, think that the Anacortes School District is going to pull kids back. We need to get it from the official sources that are in the know.
Another way you can see how you shouldn't get your news from just Facebook, but you should wait to get it from professionals who actually make sure the information is properly vetted and actually has some, standing behind it. FYI to all of our listeners.
It does. As reporters, it frustrates us a lot. As a crime reporter, it frustrates me a lot to not be the first person to have it. But at least I know that I have done everything that I can to at least make it accurate. Because if it were inaccurate, for example, I covered the Cascade mall shooting a few years ago, and one of the things that was incredibly important to us was making sure that we had accurate information, because you're talking about people and families and communities here, and if we tell you one thing and then say, oh no, something totally different happened, it's just a re-victimization. So we really, really wanted to make sure that we had everything right, as to the best of our ability, to the best of the law enforcement's ability. We just really wanted to make sure that we had everything right, because that's what we owe our community.
So is this what you would call journalistic integrity? Is that what you would define that word as, everything you're talking about right now?
Yeah, but I also think, it's just our job. That's what, again, that's kind of why we go to school for journalism, is that you learn all of these things along the way. But yeah, it would be our journalistic integrity and, also our livelihoods as journalists.
So, and another thing, so we've seen firsthand about how rumors can run rampant online. From people who get a lot of things. So we're trying to make sure that, everyone has the fair and accurate information. But also we need to remember that we cannot put our opinion in our stories. So that's another thing that, you really focus on in school. And when you're interviewing people, you're trying to represent all sides and get all the information and present it in a straightforward and factual way instead of opinion. We have people who call us, for example, and will say, I don't know why you're not writing about the injustice that they think is happening in the community, and they want us to write basically an opinion piece on it, and we'll say, well, we will present the facts and everyone can make their own decisions based on that, but we can't write what we think or what this person thinks without checking with the facts and getting multiple sides of the story, which is hard to do sometimes.
And sometimes it takes a while, but it's more important to us to have it right than to have it fast. And again, that's, like I said, it's because we are, this is our community. The Skagit Valley Herald has been publishing for 136 years, I think I just read. So, this is, I don't know about the American, but I know it's more than 100 years.
It's more than 130. We celebrate 130 in May. Yep.
Yeah. So, these are, our newspapers are embedded parts of our community, and we really care about the communities that we serve. So we owe it to our communities to do our best to be objective and accurate, and as responsible as we can.
So one thing that I love is when I'm working on a story that involves history of Anacortes or of this area, I can look back at newspapers. That's my first stop on a history story, is to look at newspapers from the time period that I'm talking about. And so something that I love is 130 years ago, you can look at the American and see what was happening in Anacortes at that time, because the American actually started before Anacortes was a city. And so you can like see that journey of the city. And so what I think is so fascinating about our jobs is that we are now writing stories that in 100 years, people will be able to look back at the newspapers that we are printing and see what life was like during the COVID-19 pandemic. Like people will be able to see what was happening at the schools and in the community. And that's just so fascinating to me and exciting and a little intimidating.
Mhm.
So if I have something that I want to be put in the newspaper or something that is happening in the community that I think you guys really should write an article about, how would I go about letting the newspaper know that I think somebody should come out and write a article about it?
So at the American, we have a main email address that goes to our newsroom. So that's the best way that we get community events or news tips. And that is just news@goanacortes.com. So it's just news@goanacortes.com. And then that goes to myself and to our editor, and we can kind of send it to the person who needs to know it or move on to the next round. And so that's the best place to start for us.
So ours is kind of similar. Like I said, we cover at the Skagit Valley Herald, we have more of a we cover from Anacortes to Concrete, and we have different beats. Like I said, mine is education. We also have a reporter who covers the environment. We have one who covers government. We have one who covers business. In normal times, we have a couple sports reporters. They're kind of writing about news right now because there's not a whole lot of high school sports happening. But we have the same. Ours is news@skagitpublishing.com, and that goes to our editors, and then our editors can say, oh, this is a sports story, we'll send it to one of our sports reporters, we'll do that. So our editors can kind of parse it out to where it belongs. We also do, for community events, we have a calendar that you can input your own events onto.
And that goes to both of us too. So that's just on the GoSkagit.com website, the 360 calendar, and we both get alerts to that so that we can keep up with events, which aren't super happening right now, but in general, that's the best way to do it.
I guess we should also say, so I work at the Skagit Valley Herald. Our website is go.skagit.com, and the Anacortes American's website is goanacortes.com.
So it's easy.
Yeah.
And they're connected, so you can look at my stories and Kara's stories and go back and forth. And the Stanwood Camino News, which is also part of our little newspaper family.
What can my family do to help support the newspaper?
Subscribe is a good way to help your newspaper. I think if you ask a journalist what they do, I think we all say that we would do it because we want to support the public good. But, we are a business and people need to get paid, and we have a product to put out. And the best way to do that is to support your local newspaper by subscribing.
I would say definitely that's the best way. And then also I would say encourage your family members or other members of the community to turn to their news source to us for their news, instead of to sources that may be less accurate.
And also when you see us out and about, say hi. We like that too, but that just helps us.
I know you said we get into this for the community good, and I was like, I get in this to do videos for the library. So I've achieved my goal now 2 times in 1 week.
Yeah, we get to be celebrities.
I do like it when I go to schools, especially, I'm sure that you experience this too. Like if you've gone to schools and you go to a classroom and they're like, well, I've been in the newspaper before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or people recognize
me.
Oh,
have you?
The newspaper lady.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I like when when the kids are like, have you ever been in the newspaper? And I'm like, I'm in it every day, guys. I write it.
Someone asked me one time if I've ever had a front page story. I was like, fun thing about only having 3 reporters is I make the front page weekly.
Yep. Yep. Make the front page quite a bit when you have small staffs like ours.
And like I said, I actually lay out the paper and make it look like this. So technically I could just put my son. No, just kidding.
Yeah. Jennifer, do you have any other questions?
What's the difference between a reporter and an editor?
Editors' jobs are less fun.
I'm so glad I'm not one. So our editor, we actually share an editor, like you have more people on your staff editing too, but we share like an overarching editor. And so basically she does not get to write very much on her own, so which is my favorite part of the job, which is why I don't want that one. But she has more pressure on her job, but she reads over everything that we write and make sure that it is accurate, everything's spelled correctly, and that it's grammatically and it follows all the journalistic rules. So
and that there's no holes in your story, like you're not forgetting anything.
That's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Is like making sure we answered all the questions that she
right,
asked.
making sure that, so for us, like the difference is we go out, we gather the facts, we write the story, we put our story in, and then the editors read our story, and what they're looking for is mistakes, grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes, questions that are remaining. And so for us at the Skagit Valley Herald, it goes through at least 2 editors. Every story goes through at least 2 editors before it makes it into either the newspaper or online. And their job is much less fun because they don't get to leave their desks. They don't get to go out and play with kids. They don't get to go out and be part of the community. They just have to sit at their desk and wait for me. And then we do share an overarching editor. Actually, all 3 of our newspapers, the Anacortes American, the Skagit Valley Herald, and the Stanwood Camino News, that editor, her other job is also to she manages our opinion sections. So news reporters don't get to handle anything with the opinion section because we pretend it doesn't exist because our job is news. So our editor, her name is Colette. Colette handles the opinion section. And if you ever find yourself in trouble, or not in trouble like we're in trouble, but if there's any questions that come up, like on the legal side, Colette has to deal with them, and I don't envy her for that.
Mad people. Another thing that I thought of just now is like, so not everything that we want to write about can make it into the newspaper because there's different, you have to be like newsy and you have to have like, you have to be relevant to the readers. And so that's another job of the editor is we pitch stories. So we have to come to the table with like, hey, I think we should write about this and this and this. And some of them are, easier to find than others, like school going back to fully remote. That's a pretty easy sell on a news story. But then the editor gets to decide if things are worth being in the paper or not, or if we should pursue a different take on a topic or things like that. And I think what you said about holes in the story is so important because when you are working on like a story, like even if you're writing like a regular story, just a creative writing story or something for class, like you see what you have there and you're like, this is perfect. This is a complete picture. And then someone will say, well, what about da da da? And then you can say, well, that did not even occur to me. So that is an excellent thing to add to the story. And it makes the stories better. Like it makes it better for us, it makes it better for the readers. And so it's really nice to have that person, even if we don't always agree.
One other thing I wanted to mention just while we're talking about different jobs at the newspaper is we also have, at the Skagit Valley Herald, we have a photographer. At the moment, we only have one photographer. His name is Oliver. He is fantastic. He's actually still a student at Western and he interned with us a couple years ago and then we hired him on. And Oliver's job is, well, he is a student at Western in the photojournalism program. So he has a lot of the same training that Brianna and I do as far as the journalism aspect goes. But he goes and he finds the best, they say a photo is worth 1,000 words. So he goes and finds the images that best suit our stories. And in normal times, Oliver goes out with reporters. He's not really going out with reporters right now, but Oliver takes photos. Just all of the beats that we have, that the reporters have, all of those are all Oliver's beats as well, because he has to take all those photos. So it's just another job opportunity that newspapers and media industries generally have. Is you have writers, you have editors, you have photographers,
and layout people usually.
And layout people and copy editors.
Yeah, the small difference with a weekly paper or a smaller paper like the American is that all of those jobs fall into fewer people. So at our job, if you're a writer, you're also a photographer and do layout and customer service and all the fun things that happen just because we have a smaller paper. So we have a smaller staff.
Awesome. Well, I don't have anything else for you ladies. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap it up? No, thank you both so much for taking the time to come be with us today and talk to us all about what it's like to be a reporter. I know that you are both very busy, obviously. We just heard how incredibly busy you are. But I think it's really great for the kiddos to be able to see exactly what goes on in the day-to-day life of a reporter and what a cool career choice it can be. I hope we've inspired some budding journalists to pursue that dream in the future. And anyone watching at home, don't forget December 1st, give the gift of reading. Come by the library, pick up a free book to give to any child or teen in your life. You can take as many as you need. And also our pilot program, any student living in the BESD district can now get a free library card. So don't forget to sign up for that. Thank you all. We'll see you again soon. Bye.
Thank you.